for joining us here. Weather Impact live coverage on our streaming. We're going to talk all about Tropical Storm Erin, really the only area of concern out there, and that's the way it has been all week. We just got our 11 a.m. update. Winds at 60 miles per hour. Central pressure has now finally dropped below 1,000, sitting at 999. And it's moving to the west at about 17 miles an hour. So we did get a little bit of strengthening yesterday evening going into the overnight. It was up to 50 miles per hour, and you see some nice strengthening already this morning up to 60 miles per hour because the 5 a.m. update this morning, it was still sitting at 50. I mentioned this a lot yesterday and the day before. It has been sitting in some cooler waters. Now today you can already see the impacts it has when it starts to move its way over warmer waters, and that is why it has strengthened up and will continue to strengthen up. We'll dive right into the forecast here because not really much has changed. You see a little bit better convection there than we have seen for the past couple of days. Been looking at some drier air getting wrapped around in that, and we're still going to see a little bit of that over the next couple of days, but it is still expected to become our first hurricane of the season as early as tomorrow. So there it is, continuing to move its way west. It should start to make a little bit of a turn to the west northwest, and there we go, 8 a.m. on Friday, a Category 1 hurricane, our first hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. And as we go through the weekend, which I'll show you in just a minute, it's going to have a little bit better moisture. So we can see it going from 90 miles per hour there, 8 p.m. on Friday to 8 p.m. on Saturday, 110, and then a Category 3 storm by Sunday morning. Could be as early as Saturday night into Sunday morning. So again, expected to continue to strengthen, and forecast models are still in fairly good agreement on the track of this. So see there, it makes its turn more of a northwest as we go through the end of the weekend, and Monday, Tuesday, and into Wednesday, a more north turn. Still watching for that turn, and that is going to be the determining factor. Again, what impacts that we're going to be seeing up the coast of Florida all the way up through the coast of the Carolinas. I know I saw quite a few posts yesterday about one run of the European model that took it relatively close to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Again, impacts in southwest Florida, very minimal. We're not really even going to see moisture out of this. The bigger impacts are going to be to the east coast, places like Jacksonville, stretching all the way up again through the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And I'll show you those, and most of those are going to be rip current risks and your wave heights. So if you're planning on a beach weekend, to start won't be too bad, but again, Sunday, Monday, especially if you're going to do anything between Jacksonville and the Outer Banks, anytime between Sunday and next Thursday, that's where you're going to have your greatest impacts. But there we go with that Category 3. So there is the drier air. This is the Saharan dust. We've been seeing this kind of impacting it over the course of its life so far, ever since coming off the coast of Africa. And again, this is one of the reasons why it has been so slow to develop. That, and I'll show you the water temperatures here in a minute. And you see we could have still a few impacts as we go throughout the rest of the week and right into the weekend. So you see here on Monday, we start to see it break up, and into Tuesday, we'll see it really not going to be much of a factor, which is why some of the forecast models are showing this possibly make it up to a Category 4. So you see all the dust is back here. You see it really starting to break up as it moves out. And the time here is Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And again, we're going to be moving through some warmer waters as we go throughout really from now on. And that's one of the things that's going to help it intensify. So one of the things I just talked about is the impacts to southwest Florida. Not going to be that much, but going to bring in our team here is because that's why we're doing this, because we have our sister stations all over, and we're continuing to track this. We have Robert Speta at First Coast News, and we have Daniel Bonds from Columbia, South Carolina. First, Robert, this is one of the things, I know you probably saw this as well, that little bit of a shift in the forecast.
Yeah, just a slight shift. And we've been seeing kind of that trend a little bit further towards the south. But I think the big thing is that extended outlook. You are starting to see at least the recurve, since we are making it to that 5-day point at this time. So that does build in at least confidence for us. But yeah, I have seen There's these slight shifts, but I think the overall confidence in where this is going continues to remain in place, kind of getting towards the north there. I would like to hear what Daniel's thoughts are actually on the Carolinas, because I think if any place on the East Coast was going to get kind of those more direct impacts from this, it would probably be him out there. For us, I'm more concerned about those rip currents, same as yesterday, as it kind of passes our area, and maybe even some kind of tidal flooding during those high tides on Monday over towards Tuesday. Hey, before I give it over to Daniel, though, I do want to give you guys a little bit of trivia, and especially for anybody watching on socials maybe, because today is the anniversary, by the way, of a big storm for us here in Florida. And James, I know you know this one, and I'm sure, Daniel, you were covering this one as well. On this date, 21 years ago, what storm that ended up getting retired made landfall in Florida? And maybe we're going to come back to that a little bit later on in the stream here. But I would like to hear your thoughts, though, Daniel, about what you think of some of the impacts are going to be. Because, yeah, we are watching this starting to make that turn towards north. And if any place could be looking at kind of the left side of this, I think it would be out there in the Carolinas.
Yeah, we were watching the same thing, especially for the Outer Banks of North Carolina, with that one run showing it kind of skirting right near the Outer Banks. But I still believe the biggest impact for us here across the Carolinas, as you guys have been talking about, will be the rip currents. It will be the beach erosion and be those wave heights that it will be moving into parts of the Carolinas. So the biggest thing we've been emphasizing this morning, we're really talking about, if you do have those beach plans heading into the weekend and next week in particular, you do want to make sure you're very careful. If the beach is closed, just don't get out there unless you really, really know what you're doing. I know the surfers are probably getting ramped up for these larger than normal waves, but the biggest thing we're watching right now are the rip currents. As of now, it looks like for us in South Carolina and North Carolina, given its current path, we're basically dry, probably a bit breezy at times, but no real major impacts besides the rip currents at this point.
Well, looking at those wave heights, I was showing the map there, and some of the models are showing, as we go throughout Tuesday into Wednesday, you look at the coast of the Carolinas, down from Hilton Head, about 7 feet, Charleston to Myrtle Beach, about 3 to 5 feet, and up Wilmington, about 7 feet as well. But you get up to the Outer Banks, and you can see that there, 10, 11, 9 feet. And it's funny, Robert, you were talking about this yesterday. You're talking about the surfers keeping an eye on this, and they're the ones who always want to go out. Of course, you have the world famous Cocoa Beach, which is near you, but again, for the same thing for the Outer Banks. We're looking at those they're pretty impressive wave heights, especially if this gets a little bit closer.
Oh, yeah, and hey, talk about the surf, but also shipping traffic. I'm personally not a fan of the term fish storm, because we have a lot of shipping out there off the coast. I personally was in the Navy one time. I was in the Navy, but there was one time where I had to argue with a captain because the storm was kind of skirting the coastline just like this, and the left side, the non-dirty, the part where you don't really see the big waves in, was kind of skirting the coast. But he said, let's go out to sea. And we were rolling through some 30-foot seas in a typhoon. And oh my goodness, just talk about losing one's lunch out there. So it's one of those things where, this could be staying out to sea, but you're right. The rip currents, the rough surf, and for shipping traffic could be having all sorts of impacts up and down the coastline. Not to mention Bermuda is going to be taking a kind of a brunt of it out there too. But for us, I mean, you got to be one good surfer if you're going to be jumping into those waves, though. I think there's going to be some powerful swells coming off of it.
Yeah, not me. And again, both you in Jacksonville and Daniel there in the Carolinas out of Charleston, there are probably going to be some people here who have some plans to maybe take a cruise out of there. And if you're going to be somewhere maybe heading towards the Bahamas for this weekend for a cruise, that is not going to be the place to be. You definitely, even as big as those ships are, you talk about 3 to 5 feet, you're going to probably, I know I would, lose my lunch there as well. So this is what we're talking about. So yesterday, we watch all these model runs, and I'm going to show you this graphic right here. And I know this graphic right here is very busy, but this is one of the reasons why we preach this all the time. We say don't ever just take someone posting one run to Facebook and talking about death and destruction and all that, because this right here is only two forecast models. The white is the Euro, the yellow is the GFS, and these are what's called ensemble runs. So basically, you got a little thing tweaked here and there, they run it again, then they do another tweak, then they run it again, and this is how far of the spread the forecast models are. So, of course, they take the consensus, and that is the next graphic I'm going to show you, is where it's showing. And I'll show you the difference between the two models. But again, guys, this is why we always tell people, that's why we're doing this every day at 11 o'clock whenever we get our 11 a.m. update, because you really need someone who is going to look at this and be able to break that down for you and not just sit there and take, say, this run right here and watch it hitting Charleston, South Carolina as, you know, maybe another close to what Hugo did. So again, you can see this far spread is from Hilton Head to far out to sea. So again, now you take the consensus, and that's where we get, again, the forecast models that I'm going to show you here. So let's start out with the Euro, because this is the one that had, I guess, a more significant change yesterday. Good news, it's back to about where it was yesterday. But yeah, this is the one I'm talking about. You can watch it here where it pauses. That's where it's supposed to be a Category 3 storm, major hurricane. And then as it continues, it's actually going to slow down. And that's typical when they make those turns, because when the high pressure's in control, it speeds up. But yeah, Daniel, this is more going to be for you. And this is what we're looking at. And again, this right here is the latest, which kind of gave it a little bit of a shift back. You've been seeing this pattern as well.
Yeah, and it still shows that the possibility of at least having some type of impact towards the Outer Banks of North Carolina. You know, for us here in South Carolina, we're watching it closely. We're about Columbia, we're about 3 hours, 2.5 hours from Myrtle Beach. We'll say maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours from Charleston. So we're a little bit away from the water per se, but some of those other forecast model runs you were showing, we were talking about those earlier, and not that those would come to fruition, but we were just looking at them saying, what if that would, some of those, especially that one down towards Hilton Head, that would be probably the worst case scenario for us in the Midlands. But, you know, it looks like the consensus keeps this well away from South Carolina, but you were just showing the Euro there. Pretty dang close to the Outer Banks of North Carolina.
Yeah, that's about as close as you'd like it. That's a little too close from comfort. You're looking at about 300 miles there to the Outer Banks, and you take that over to Myrtle Beach, and you're looking at roughly about 400 miles from Myrtle Beach. And again, that's just the one model run. And now it has been kind of a little
Actually,
west-leaning.
Daniel, I had a real question for Daniel real quick. And I'm just kind of curious, because I did see a couple of those model runs right there that, James, you were just showing that fantastic graphic, all the different ensembles. I'm curious, have you already been asked today by people who may have seen that image right there on social media, and they see just those one or two lines within the ensemble, and they're saying, what does this mean for me? Has that been asked to you here?
Oh, yeah, and I don't know if you can see, I have my laptop right here. I'm answering questions right now on Facebook just about people seeing some of the hype, I'll say, and they're showing that one model run that shows the worst case scenario for us in South Carolina and North Carolina. So you're trying to dispel some of that, because you don't want to freak people out, but you want people to at least know there's something out there. But you're right, one little model run and it goes out on social media and people start worrying about it, and we are talking about it and trying to say, hey, don't panic, but at least be prepared. And keep in mind, hurricane season is a long season. We go all the way to November. We can have it even outside of November. So we have to, you know, take these for what they're worth. Don't panic, but as always, just be prepared.
Yeah, and that's why we do this, because, you know, each day, and these model runs can go back and forth, but what we're looking at is consistency. And one of the ones that have been actually relatively consistent has been the GFS model, and that's the one that I have up here. And it hasn't shifted too much. It's been going a little back and forth, not as much as that, again, one run of the European did yesterday. But this is one of the ones that we've been watching as well. And you can see that GFS model. And when you measure the eye of that, like showing the Outer Banks and into Myrtle Beach, 300 miles, and you can see this one's a little bit different. You're talking close to 600 miles from the eye there to Myrtle Beach. And same thing if you go to the Outer Banks. The other one was showing 3. That one's about 4. Another 100 miles there. And the difference is, of course, the proximity to Bermuda, which is a little over 200 miles. So put these models together. And again, this is one of the things that we analyze is this model comparison. And I know that we see it more than, like you're talking, Daniel, people on social media, that it'll pop up and they'll see that one run, to where we see every run and we're like, yeah, it's a little here, then it's back here, then it's back over here, and it's back over here. So here is the model comparison. And again, the European model has consistently been a little bit further to the west. But again, that's actually relatively close to be an entire week away. And those tracks are still relatively close. So they're still showing good things for us, which again is pretty good news. And we talk about the main impacts. And again, all of us are focusing on different things. We're all watching the storm, we're watching the strength, we're watching the track. But when it comes to impacts like here in Tampa, we're not even looking at waves or any even rain. So we're not even looking at more than normal rain chances. But this is, again, why we're all doing this together, why we're all talking about this, because there are going to be different impacts for different places. And like you were talking about, Robert, you have certain things that you have been looking at this entire time for your impacts there in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I think the biggest impacts for us are definitely those rip currents. And I know for people from Florida, as you know, they're on the West Coast and even up the Carolinas, most of us understand what a rip current is, and especially when you get those big storms offshore. My chief concern, I said it yesterday, I'm still going to stand by it today, is not direct impacts for us here. It's the misleading factor. I honestly would prefer to have a storm a little bit close enough where it doesn't produce damage, but close enough where it doesn't. It does bring cloud cover, rainfall, a light breeze, because in that type of setup, I don't care where you're from, you're going to look at the ocean, you're going to look at the rain, you're going to go, I'm not going in the ocean. But my worry is that this is going to be far enough offshore where the weather's actually going to be kind of okay. Yeah, it'll be a little breezy out there, and we're going to be looking at some passing showers, but for the most part, temperatures high 80s, low 90s. Not too bad, right? And then people are going to venture out into that water because of that misleading factor, and they don't understand the full force of those swells as they come on shore. And I think that's going to be one of the big issues here. I like this graphic here, though. We're talking about why. The why of this all. Why is it churning towards the north? Because I have been asked that a few times, because a lot of people are sharing comparisons between this and Irma. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, the spread was there, and the spread was showing, originally this Irma could have turned towards the north or towards the west. And I have to break it down. This great graphic right here that you have up, James, that high pressure towards the northwest, that wasn't quite there with Irma. So that did allow the ridge to build in. And we don't have that here. Plus, Irma was technology advances. 9 years ago? Wow. No, 8 years ago. Wow. And I think guidance has even come a long way since then as well. But that's a big question I've been getting a lot lately, is just, why are you so confident of this turn towards the north?
Yeah, it's all about that break in the high pressure, and we've showed some of the history of this. And like I mentioned yesterday, we could put 50 storms on there in the track and what we were looking at on each one of them. But it doesn't matter about the intensity of these storms, because it's really all about the steering, where this is going to take it. Because like you said, you could have what they call fish storms out there that are Cat 5s that nobody really cares about. Or you could have a Category 1 making landfall in the right spot in the right direction that would produce quite a bit of damage. I mean, I saw it in Myrtle Beach with Ian, Worst storm surge that I've seen there, I mean, worse storm surge than Matthew, worse storm surge than Florence, and then, all these other storms, and it was only a Cat 1. It was a tropical storm that went up to Cat 1. Of course, everybody knows what Ian did to South Florida. But again, went back offshore and got steered right back into the coast. So that's why we always watch the steering to try to figure out where these things are going. And a lot of times these models, it's down to 2 to 3 days out to where we're really seeing the impacts of this. And it's all about this high pressure and which one is going to be winning out. So, of course, you look at the two different models and we keep showing the Euro going a little bit further to the west. The reason for that is because the Euro model is showing this high pressure being the stronger of the two, which of course is going to give it a push. Now, again, not making it landfall here, but you see what I mean by going a little bit to the west. GFS model showing this one being a little bit weaker, this one possibly being a little bit stronger, and then that's why it would go here. So this one here is actually the European model, and as you can see, it does kind of skate the coast just a little bit because it shows this high pressure here kind of sliding over a little bit. And that's what we're really watching, again, especially for you two, talking about just a little bit of a slide. The impacts are going to be so much more, talking about waves, talking about beach erosion, and this is one of the things that we have to constantly look at, like you said, because it could be nice outside. You can have some angry looking sea with 4 to 6 foot waves, and especially a strong longshore current that really will make that beach erosion a lot worse. So this is one of the things that not only the impacts to us, but the impacts to our environment and the beaches that a lot of people daily enjoy. So we'll be watching this for that big break in that ridge of high pressure. And that's what we're really going to see as we go into Wednesday and into Thursday. Are you guys seeing anything different from what you're looking at from these forecast models? And which ones are you liking best?
I'll let Daniel take this one. Let's see. I want to hear his thoughts. He's got the experience here, so I really want to see what he's kind of been analyzing there.
I will say I always tend to, and I guess this might be my own bias, but I always tend to like the European model a little bit better. And again, I think that's my own personal bias, but I really do like that steering flow map that you guys had up just a second ago. I think that paints a pretty good picture of the scenario that we're kind of looking at as this continues to evolve. I do really like that, and it tells the story of how the high pressure system flows and how it's looking for that weakness. But again, it may be my own bias, but I still kind of go towards the European forecast model. I probably need to get rid of that bias because I feel like the GFS has done pretty well in the past as well, but I always go towards the European, I think.
Well, I know, Robert, that you've watched. You were talking about how long it's been since you've had landfall, but you have seen quite a few storms skate right up the coast. Have you noticed the same? Because I've gotten my bias as to which ones I like more. Because there's some that are better with wind, some of the better with rain. What are you seeing there in Jacksonville?
Well, especially in this type of setup, I have to agree that the ECMWF is superior. I'm sorry. I would love to support the American model, go GFS, but it feels like a lot of times when we get into those long-range outlooks, the GFS does have this biasness to get a little bit more aggressive with the storms as well, and just when it gets to that near term, I lean into it, but that long term, I'm going to lean on the ECMWF a lot more. I am curious because what's just happened this year. Well, it's been building, but this year it's being released publicly. Is your thoughts on the AI model? Because there is an ECMWF AI now that is. It's not handling the storm the greatest. That's one of the models you may have seen social media where people are posting it making landfall when none of the operationals are. It's a little different dynamics, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that because, especially Daniel, you say you like the ECMWF operational. Have you been looking at the AI model? And I think it still has some time to go to get better at forecasting.
Yeah, and I will say, and you guys know our in-house, what we call here our in-house forecast model or the graph. It's done well for us in the past as well for those short-term things, especially for the local impacts. So you're talking about the I guess the wider picture with the global models, and then you're getting down a little bit closer to the more local impacts. And the graph, which we call our in-house model, I think has done a good job. It's not quite in line, or it doesn't quite go out far to see like the global models do, but you guys know we use that thing all the time, especially this time of the year.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Daniel, when it comes, both of you, Robert and Daniel, we all three basically saying the same thing. And whenever you track these systems for, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, you know that the long-term Euro is better on track. I feel the GFS is a little bit better on rain. So I think it handles, I always think the Euro overdoes rain too far out. And then when we get a little bit closer, I think that GFS really dials it in. But, you know, it's all in there. And again, the reason why we do so many of these, we're doing this and we've been doing this all week. We're going to do this through the weekend into next week is because of these changes. And the one thing that I'm sure at home, you know this, is when it gets closest, when you get to that, you know, between 1 and 3 days, that's when your forecasts get more accurate. That's when you see those spaghetti models, they're not really diverging too much there. So it does look like I said, the good thing is, guys, that we got some pretty good agreement here. This is something we're going to continue to track. Forecasted to be a hurricane tomorrow, a major hurricane through the weekend. So again, continue to join us, and all three of us are, I mean, this is our jobs. This is what we do. We love doing this, and the best thing is we love the ones that don't hit. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, this one's going to be the same way. So I appreciate you at home tuning into us, and hope that we got all your questions asked. And if you have any questions, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or X, or send us an email, and we'll see if maybe we can answer one of your questions for you.